my big first transition was transitioning to a new home, a new country. At the same time, transitioning from the single life into the married life, which for me, I was 30 years old at the time, so that was quite a transition. Learning how to share a space after living alone for a long time, and just all of the intricacies of marriage. And then also transitioning from a community that I really loved, that I had embraced. I had lived in Michigan there for 5 years and was really involved in my community. And so there was a lot of transitions all happening at once.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Meta Transitions. Today, we have my friend Emily with us, and she is an educator. Just looking forward to hearing your story, Emily.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So we'll jump right into it. What is your transition story?
Well, I feel like the last 2.5 years have been nothing but transition for me. So about, I guess in the spring, it'll be 4 years ago, I met my husband and my now husband, and we dated for several months before he had to return to his home country of Canada. And at that point, we had to make a transition in our relationship. And we dated long distance and then later got engaged. And so then I was kind of at a crossroads. What do we do? Do we end up, moving to Canada together, or does he come back to the States? Because that's where I was living at the time. And so we did decide to move to Canada. And so that was my big first transition was transitioning to a new home, a new country. At the same time, transitioning from the single life into the married life, which for me, I was 30 years old at the time. So that was quite a transition. Learning how to share a space after living alone for a long time, and just all of the intricacies of marriage. And then also transitioning from a community that I really loved, that I had embraced. I had lived in Michigan there for 5 years and was really involved in my community. And so there was a lot of transitions all happening at once. And moving to a new country is challenging. Some people have more challenge than others. For me, obviously, I didn't have to learn a new language or anything like that, but you would be surprised at just the little things that are just different enough.
Yeah, it's like a culture clash.
Yes, absolutely. And so I still to this day, now being in Canada for 2.5 years, I still to this day find myself catching, before I say a word, like, is it process or process, right? Miles or kilometers, is it Celsius or Fahrenheit? I have to do a lot of, kind of converting in my head and that kind of thing. So there is enough of a difference that you tend to just kind of always be a little bit like on. And I feel like sometimes I don't fully relax when I'm in discussions with people, because I'm always trying to, if I use the example of like XYZ or XYZ, right? I'm like always on and thinking about it, right? So that's been a big transition. And then transitioning jobs, I was working in a university setting and then moved to teaching for an online school when we first moved to Alberta. And then we had a whole year. Our first year of marriage was in Alberta. I was working online. My husband was working at a university. And we had just kind of settled in and developed a little bit of consistency to our lives. And then we moved here to British Columbia, which was another big transition.
Move. Oh,
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And you, of course, have transitioned provinces. And, it's not a huge change necessarily, maybe a little bit in the weather or things like that. But just that transition of another place to live, another kind of, I don't know, there's just, anytime you have a new job or anytime, you make a change like that, a move, it's just a lot to get used to, kind of reframing, even what your community situation, that kind of thing. And so we've been here for about 15 months. And so it has been a really wonderful transition for us, but things have had to change in the way that we relate to each other, I work a lot of hours. We don't get to see each other quite as much, like when I was working from home. So that's been a big transition as well. So it feels like the last 2.5, 3 years have been nothing but transition.
I can see that. Like, it sounds like it's been one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And I could see how that could be quite, as you said, feeling like you're always on, not just in the sort of Canadian context of, you know, needing to relate to others and speak, you know, Canadian, but, you know, always sort of in that space of change and transformation and movement. And maybe my question for you there is, how has that how has these transitions impacted you?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I have always been a big planner. I, for several years, worked as an event organizer. I am a teacher, now a principal. I've been in education my entire career in some context, even during that event organizing period. And so I have always been, you know, the person that has like the extra Sharpies and the extra duct tape and the, you know, whatever. I have a little kit of like, just in case this for a different event, or, you know, I'll plan like an extra serving of something for a meal, or I'm just always prepared. And all of this change and all of this transition, it's been really hard to feel like I was prepared for anything.
Yeah, I
right?
can imagine that.
Yeah. So
it's
that
like chaotic, whereas you're a person who's planned out, you know where everything goes and what you're going to be doing, you know, based on your schedule. But all that sort of goes out the window because you can't plan if you don't know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And so I think just bringing a new spirit of flexibility into my life and just letting go and just kind of embracing whatever is coming my way, and just in some ways lowering my expectations for myself and for those around me, and just understanding that there's a lot of change happening, and it's okay to go easy on myself and the people around us. I tend to have a pretty high standard for myself, a lot of expectations, and so just kind of releasing those or lowering them, and just saying, you know, it's okay to not feel prepared. Like, it's okay to just walk into a situation with openness and just embrace what comes. And so that has been a huge change in all of these transitions, is just trying to, you know, live in the tension of not knowing and have an open-handed approach to it.
Yeah, I could see how that would be relieving, you know, so that need to, you know, be on, needing to know what to do, but then giving yourself permission to, as you said, let go, you know, releasing the expectation of others or even of yourself, you know, and sort of giving over to sort of that sense of flexibility that you talked about, and just allowing things to happen and fall where they be. I can see how that would be very, you know, less stressful for sure, which stress is a huge part of transitions. So by going through sort of that process, I could see how that would have been helpful.
So we have a very similar story, I would say, in that we, I wouldn't say that we even got married to our partners like later in life, but just, I guess, like in a lot of our friend groups, like people are getting married more in their early 20s or mid 20s. And so we have kind of a similar story, like you moved provinces, you got married. So what was that transition like for you?
Okay, so I would say, so moved from Ontario to BC with no intention of necessarily meeting anybody or anything like that. It was I was moving here to go to school, to do my master's, and the intention was to move back to Ontario. So after I was done, I was going to move back, right? Then I got here, got into the work, doing the master's. In and of itself is a huge transition with school, but met my husband, who was then just a stranger, the first Sabbath I went to the church I was attending here. So I was like, oh, this happened. And then, you know, that in and of itself was, again, another transition in the sense that I wasn't expecting to meet somebody, somebody, and then, you know, forge this really interesting friendship over the next little while. And going through school and that friendship and a few other, bumps along the way. And I would say that transition was chaotic for me, in the sense that there was some uncertainty, are we going to be, in a relationship with each other? Because it was really just a friendship at the time for probably about 2 of the 6 years now that I've been here. During that time, I was like, but I really like this person, but not knowing what was going to happen. But one thing I did do is I trusted myself. I was like, you know what, this person's a good friend. Well, my husband is a good friend at the time, and I really wanted to keep that friendship. So I felt like one thing that I did do that helped me through that process was trusting myself. And then the other thing was, similarly to you, I am very much a planner. So I would plan everything out, and what I couldn't plan, I had to let go of, like you. So that idea of trusting myself, letting go of what I couldn't control, and, controlling what I could. And that helped me through school. And that helped me to be able to wait for when my now husband was ready for us to be in a relationship. And I think that can be tough. Like, it can be really hard, especially when you're in the situation, you're like, but I want this now, and you just sort of have to recognize that, okay, I can't control what's happening right now. So that's sort of what my transition with moving here and meeting my husband was like.
Yeah. Sure. And I think that that's a great tip, that controlling what you can. I know that is something that's really helped me. I have to find the little moments and the little kind of pockets of things that I can control. And even if it's as simple as like making sure that my kitchen is clean. I know that seems like a silly thing, but just being able to see like clear countertops, there's something that it does for my brain. It's like, I can't control this big thing over here, but I can at least control that my kitchen is clean, or my bed is made, or, I can control maybe like a certain aspect of my schedule. And I found that to be very helpful in all of these changes and all of these transitions. I said to my husband earlier this week, I just want something to feel consistent. Because so much about our life has changed. And kind of the second part of our transition story in marriage is we did a year in Alberta, then we moved to British Columbia, and with the intention of moving into a house that has been promised to us, and the landlords were doing some renovations at the time, and so we knew that it would be a month after we moved here before we would move into the house. But those renovations stretched on and on and on, and in fact are still not done. We just moved into the house about a little less than a month ago, and so that was something that was really challenging because it felt like there was nothing I could control. Obviously, COVID is making us all feel that way.
Oh, for sure.
And has deeply affected my job and education. But then in my personal, my home life and my professional life, it didn't feel like there was anything that I could really have any type of, control over or plan. And so it was kind of a helpless feeling, but I think the things that helped me, or the tips that I would give your listeners, is to find kind of those little areas that you can kind of buy back some sense of agency over, and just decide what that is to you, and then really draw a boundary around that thing, if it's important to you. And if you have a partner or a roommate or friends or family around you and supporting you, like, clearly communicate to them, like, this thing is important to me. I know it may seem silly, but I just really need to make sure that our bed is made every day, or I just really need to make sure that, I know that we're going to have this consistent, coffee date, or whatever it is, right? Or like, our family's going to do a family phone call, every Saturday morning, or whatever it is, just to have that consistency to your life when everything feels like it's changing, or nothing is very solid, or that you can count on it. So I would say that would be definitely a tip. Also, it seems kind of so nebulous to say just like practice letting go, but really taking some time to reflect and evaluate on what is important and what's not important, and kind of choosing your battles. I know even in my marriage, trying to evaluate some of the things, like if there's a little annoyance or a little, kind of a tension point around even something silly about our daily routine, really thinking about, is this something that's worth bringing up or worth turning into maybe a larger conversation, or should I just let it go? And then also maybe sometimes I would even err on the side of that too much, and then I would find myself being resentful later. And so just really clearly communicating, like asking for what I needed, like I really need us to do X or Y or Z, right? See, I had to think about that. X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, right? And just things like that. It doesn't feel very fun or romantic to always to ask for what you need, but it's so important. And then that person can then respond and feel like they know how to best support you in a time of transition. I know it's been hard for my husband to watch me navigate all of these changes, because he feels like there's not much that he can do to help or to support, because it's not things that he can control either, right? And so I definitely being really self-reflective about that kind of letting go process. It's not it's kind of almost a platitude that we tell, like, oh, you just need to let it go. Well, especially for someone with a personality like me, or maybe you, who like to plan and like to kind of know what's going on, that's not easy, and it seems very vague. Like like I need something concrete. Like, well, how do I let it go? How do I
we
practice
don't work
that?
well in chaos.
Yes, absolutely. So just prioritizing the things that really are important and matter, and the other things that ideally, in an ideal situation, I would be able to control this a little bit more, but this thing I'm just going to kind of let go. I think
so recognizing it's temporary.
Yes, absolutely.
Putting it within that context of, you know what, this is temporary. It'll get back to normal, eventually, hopefully soon. And I think, sort of what I'm hearing from you, and, sort of keywords that I'm hearing is consistency, making sure that, you create some consistency in the chaos, making sure that you're communicating well with your partner, if you have a partner or someone in your space, and sort of that sense of letting go, recognizing what you can't control, and being able to let go of that and recognize that things are temporary.
And cut yourself some slack. I think that's huge. Self-compassion. I've actually probably within the last 6 weeks instituted a new practice. My husband and I usually talk about something that we're grateful for right before bed, but we added in now a gold star. We give ourselves a gold star, and it's just a daily practice of self-compassion. Like, what did I do today? Not like what did I accomplish so much as, maybe what did I let go, or what did I how did I give myself a little grace or a little self-compassion, cut myself a little slack? And that's been an important practice for me in the last several weeks, because I can be really hard on myself. And to just acknowledge that the last several years have been hard, and there's been a lot of change and not a lot that stayed the same or was consistent. And so to give myself a little credit for that. I think, in this age of, we talk about self-care all the time, and it's the treat yourself kind of era, right? Of course. But I think a way of treating yourself sometimes is to just give yourself a little compassion, right? I think sometimes those treats can delve into an unhealthy area, right? Like, you don't want to be eating ice cream every single night.
Oh, definitely not.
You might want to, but you probably shouldn't.
I know. Sure, butter pecans.
Yes, yeah. But I think just the sense of sometimes you just need to say, you know what? It's okay to recognize that this thing is hard, or that your brain feels tired because you're always trying to speak Canadian, or you're always, trying to find a little sense of, a solid ground in the midst of all the shifting that's been going on. And just to recognize that even though, yes, things are going well, and I'm keeping it all together, it's okay to feel like it's hard to keep it all together, or all this change has been challenging, and to just recognize that, I think, is really important. So I would tell your listeners, give yourself a daily gold star, take a look, reflect on your day, and say, that I could have gone down that road and gone into that argument, but I just let that thing go, or I just built in a little bit more margin. I said no to that thing. I drew a boundary here, and to just kind of recognize that and celebrate that for yourself, I think can be very helpful as you navigate a transition.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm taking away from that is sort of normalize your situation. This is okay. This is what's normally going to happen in a situation like this. And you know what? I can feel good about, the things that I've accomplished so far. So rewarding yourself after normalizing it with that compassion and that care. Yeah, that's great.
And I think we're all experiencing a lot of transition just in this COVID-19 pandemic season. And I think that the thing I've been reflecting on for myself and my community lately is that at some point in the last several weeks, maybe last month or two, we've settled into this reality of this is the way things are going to be for a while, even though things have been changing even in the last several weeks. But we've kind of pushed ourselves to this place of, well, I guess this is our new normal, like we hear people saying. And so like I just have to kind of buckle up and, like rise to the challenge. And we're still living in a pandemic, right? And so it's okay to cut yourself some slack and to say, this is hard and this is all new and this is challenging and it's traumatic for people and the different ways that, our lives are being affected. Like these things are hard. Yeah. And so to just be kind to ourselves, I think is really important.
Definitely. Being kind is, the most important thing anyone can do right now, especially in these COVID times. Thank you so much for being with us, Emily, and for sharing so candidly about, what you've been going through. And I'm sure individuals in our audience can take away some of the tips that you've shared with us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
So Emily, how can our viewers contact you?
Yeah, so I'll give you my email address. It's just emilybrusson@gmail.com. We can drop that into the description, I guess, and here on your channel. And yeah, happy to answer emails and get in touch with anybody that has any questions, or if I can help in any way, glad to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. We definitely will put the email in the description below. Thank you for being with us today, and take care. See you next time.